When you're thinking about making a campaign or even running some pre-bought content that you've bought from any form of Dungeons & Dragons selling shop, wherever that may be, Amazon, you have a couple of choices when it comes to homebrewing magic items. It's a really fun thing to do, but one of those decisions that has a lot of moving parts you've got to think about. I would approach it from one of 3 different ways. The first approach, and the easiest approach, is to reskin a magical item that is already in the Dungeon Master's Guide, or perhaps on some sort of fan-based site elsewhere on the internet. If I were to take, for instance, a Mace of Warning or a Sword of Vengeance, it's very easy to take one of those weapons and simply move it into an Axe of Vengeance, or a polearm of vengeance. Do you see what I mean? Very simple to do, but very, very quick at reskinning something that flavors into something a character would want. I have had no ends of conversations with people who are playing players that get given the most amazing great axe and go, but I want to fight with a spear. I'm gonna leave it. Make it into a spear. It's fine. Play up to your players. It's good. The second option is, and it's a little bit more drastic than the first, is to take an object or item that's already in the game and change it, tweak it. Take something like the Sunblade, a longsword that does radiant damage, 2d8 or something along those lines. Let's make it thunder damage, so it's now crackling lightning, or cold damage as ice is constantly shot out of it. That's very easy to do. Things like charges per day, class requirements, all of that can be changed pretty easily. Take something like the Rod of Pact Keeping for the Warlocks, where every short rest you get 1 spell and a couple of little additions to hit. Make it into a sorcerer item. Change the spell slot recovery to 1 additional meta magic. It's quite easy to do. The other easy thing to do with that is to simply retake a spell that's already in the item and replace it with another one of the same level. A lot of staffs, wands, scrolls, they all work by casting a certain amount of spells per day, and each spell in the player's handbook has a level, so it might cast 3 level 1 spells a day and 1 level 2 spell a day. Bardic instruments are a great example of this. It's very easy to remove a spell and replace it with something else a little bit more centralized on the campaign you're trying to do. Say you have a player that loves to cast a fireball, but you rolled and got a scroll of enlarge reduce. It's quite easy just to change one to the other. The third and most drastic option, and personally my favorite, is to start from scratch. Now, this can seem like a little bit of a daunting process if you go about it from the other direction. People worry about, I need to make it a rare magical item. How powerful does that be? What have I got to do? Flip it the other way. What do you want the item to do, and go from there. Now, there are a couple of places you can start. You can look at how an item is set up in the Dungeon Master's Guide. There's a whole section on artifacts, which is a really good thing to read. They bring in this concept of an item gaining good or bad properties that blend and create something with a little bit of interest. And actually, that's a really good point. Bad things on an item can often be as fun as good things on an item. Start with what an item should do and go from there. Say you have an idea in your head, like the little arrow from Guardians of the Galaxy, where when whistled it shoots around hitting into people. That's what I want to do, so I'm going to make a long bow arrow that does that, maybe a bonus action to activate it, and after that point it hits 1 person per turn. Brilliant, I have the idea of what I want it to do. I can then look at the Dungeon Master's Guide and work out how rare it needs to be to fit into other items of a similar level. If you're unsure, start weak and get more powerful as you go along. It's far easier to unlock an item's progress or abilities with further use than it is to scale something down later. But if you do bring something in that's too powerful, don't be afraid to tweak it at a later point. It's very, very easy to sit down with a player and say, I made you this thing, I thought it was a bit of fun, I'm glad you're enjoying it, but you shouldn't really be able to hit 250 damage on a dragon in 1 hit. Do you mind if we tweak it just a little bit? Most people will be very understanding and will happily allow you to tweak things afterwards on the understanding that you're happy to make things for them in the first place. And don't forget backstory. Every item has a reason why it's in the place that you found it. It was with the person that was holding it, or why it was made in the first place. Think about those little details before you get caught up in the mechanics of it. That's really interesting, that's important. The rules can blend out a little bit as you go along.